2006 was a typically quiet year for world wrestling entertainment. You know, public drug busts, major superstar departures, resurrecting an entire brand, dealing with a laundry list of injuries, producing 16 pay-per-views. Yes, that's right, between SmackDown, Raw, the resurrected ECW, and of course the multi-brand events, there were 16 order-only shows on the offing. There was, to say the least, a lot going on both behind the scenes and on the screen. It was a time for experimentation and giving previously underutilized performers a chance in the hot seat, with Rey Mysterio, Rob Van Dam, Edge and Booker T all getting a chance to hold the big belts. Conversely, it was also a time for looking to the past, with ECW wrestlers getting added to the mix, Jeff Hardy returning, the McMahons all over Raw, and DX getting the band back together for a long summer of knob and poop jokes. There was a lot more to worry about, with boogeymen, Samoan savages, and evil leprechauns on the scene, but perhaps nothing was as scary as a certain ECW pay-per-view that could be one of the worst ever. With that in mind, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and this is every WWE pay-per-view of 2006 ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 16, December to Dismember. Number 16 is a no-brainer because the show was clearly put together by someone without one. There were only 2 matches officially announced going into December to Dismember, an event so catastrophic it essentially killed off the revived ECW brand and led to the exit of Paul Heyman. The event was so bad that Tommy Dreamer and Stevie Richards both asked for their releases afterwards, a release that was naturally denied. The show was attended by less than 5,000 people and received 90,000 pay-per-view buys, the lowest number in WWE history at that point. Okay, so it was a disaster, but was there anything, even one thing that was good on it? Well, the Hardys vs Eminem opener was solid if not a little too long, and the Extreme Elimination Chamber had its moments, even if fans hated the finish and were dismayed at the decision to remove Sabu and replace him with Hardcore Pissing Holly. As for the other matches, how did Balls Mahoney versus Matt Striker, Daivari versus Tommy Dreamer, Elijah Burke and Sylvester Turkey versus the FBI, and Kelly Kelly and Mike Knox versus Ariel and Kevin Thorne sound? You'd be absolutely gutted if you got all of that at a house show, let alone an actual pay-per-view. Number 15, Cyber Sunday. Taboo Tuesday became Cyber Sunday in 2006, but moving the show to the day of rest didn't really improve the quality of the show all that much. In the main event, the champions of all 3 brands collided when John Cena, King Booker and Big Show met with fans voting to determine whether the WWE World or ECW title would be on the line. Fans voted for Booker's strap to be up for grabs, and he successfully defended it thanks to interference from Kevin Federline, who was not some hot new upstart straight out of developmental, but was actually Britney Spears' former one-time husband. If your belt spins, you might as well feud with Z-list celebrities, I suppose. Elsewhere, DX and Rated RKO had themselves a good match with Eric Bischoff voted as special guest referee. The heels got the win after untold amounts of shenanigans. Ric Flair and Roddy Piper won the tag titles from the Spirit Squad in a nice moment for the nostalgic amongst us. Umaga's victory over Kane, Jeff Hardy's win over Carlito, Lita's victory over Mickie James, and Crime Time's triumph in a tornado-style 4-way tag match were all okay-ish, but nothing you couldn't see on your average episode of Raw. Number 14, Royal Rumble. The true high point of the Royal Rumble pay-per-view was Rey Mysterio going the distance to win the match in honor of the recently departed Eddie Guerrero. A genuine feel-good moment, Rey's victory was a nice surprise since most folks likely assumed one of the favourites like Triple H, Randy Orton or Shawn Michaels would prevail. As a Rumble, it wasn't one of the better ones, probably somewhere in the middle, but people are destined to remember it as a moment rather than for the match itself. Unusually for the era, the Rumble match went on in the middle of the show, leaving the 2 world title matches to headline. In the first, John Cena regained the WWE title from the Red Hot Edge in a decent enough match. They'd have far better ones in the months and years to come though. And Kurt Angle retained the World Heavyweight title over Mark Henry in a Blair main event. The only reason this one went on last is because it featured the return of The Undertaker, who showed up to set up a future match with our Olympic hero. Elsewhere, Gregory Helms jumped to SmackDown and won the Cruiserweight title in a spirited multi-man opener, the Boogeyman squashed JBL, and Mickie James beat Ashley with Trish Stratus as your special guest referee. Not a terrible show by any means, but the Royal Rumble is the best pay-per-view of the year, fight me in the comments, so this overall was a bit disappointing. Number 13, Survivor Series. The 2006 Survivor Series didn't feel like one of the big four, with several underwhelming matches, lots of filler, and no real standout. The best match on the show was perhaps Ken Kennedy's first blood victory over The Undertaker, which further proved the brash trash talker could hang at the very top level. Undertaker's post-match battering of Kennedy proved that he could swing a steel chair about as hard as any human being that ever lived. The trio of traditional Survivor Series elimination tags were an odd bunch of matches. In the first, the Legends team of Ric Flair, Sergeant Slaughter, Dusty Rhodes, and Ron Simmons beat the Spirit Squad. This was basically the last hurrah for the cheerleaders. Triple H, Shawn Michaels, the Hardys, and CM Punk completely trounced Mike Knox, who, Gregory Helms, Johnny Nitro, Edge, and Randy Orton. The babyfaces all survived and easily dispatched the heels without hardly breaking a sweat. The match was most notable for the tremendous reaction the straight edge superstar received and the total burial of poor old Knox. And Team Cena, Big Survivor John, Bobby Lashley, Rob Van Dam, Sabu and Kane beat Team Big Show, Netflix's favourite wrestling dad, MVP, Umaga, Finlay and Test. I mean, those teams are just proper weird, aren't they? Lashes and Cena survived. And in the main event, Batista regained the World Heavyweight title by beating King Booker in a humdrum contest. They just never seem to click, you know? Elsewhere, Chris Benoit retained the US title against Chavo Guerrero, and Mickie James beat Lita for the women's title in Lita's last match with the company for bloody yonks. Number 12, the Great American Bash. A show positively ravaged by injuries, WWE were forced to shuffle the deck and make the best of it at the Great American Bash. Great Khali, Mark Henry, Super Crazy, and Bobby Lashley were all scheduled to participate in featured matches, but had to withdraw either due to a serious injury or a bout of elevated liver enzymes. Khali was removed from his Punjabi prison match with Undertaker and replaced with Big Show. That's like losing a fiver and finding about £7.50. The match was crap. Kennedy subbed for Henry and took a battering from Batista in the Animals' big return match. It was good while it lasted, and Batista looked like a real killer. Matt Hardy took Super Crazy's place to go up against Cruiserweight champ Gregory Helms in a non-title affair, which was decent. And Lashley was simply removed from a triple threat match with William Regal and Finlay, making it a singles match. Though the dynamic was thrown off, the two old pros put in a solid shift and did the best they could in the circumstances. Elsewhere, Paul London and Brian Kendrick retained the tag titles against Kid Cash and Jamie Noble in a fun opener. Ashley won a four-way bra and panties match, and King Booker beat Rey Mysterio after a Chavo Guerrero heel turn to capture his first WWE World Heavyweight title in a good match. Number 11, New Year's Revolution. The main story coming out of New Year's Revolution was Edge cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase and beating John Cena for the WWE title. Cena had just won a belting Elimination Chamber match, also featuring Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Carlito, Chris Masters and Kane, when Vince McMahon introduced the Rated R superstar who promptly hit 2 spears to win the WWE title for the first time. It was an incredible way to end what had been a so-so show. Edge was also present in the opener, losing to Ric Flair when he got himself disqualified after a decent match. Trish Stratus retained her women's title over Mickie James in the pair's first significant meeting in their long rivalry. Jerry Lawler beat Gregory Helms because reasons. Triple H overcame the Big Show in something of a sleeper match with some strong work and tight psychology centered around an injury to the world's largest hand. Shelton Benjamin with his mama beat Viscera in a match that happened, again because reasons. And Ashley won a bra and panties gauntlet match before stripping off anyway, because why have one woman in her skivvies when you can have all 6? Naturally, Mae Young was one of those women. Right, time for a cold shower. Number 10, Armageddon. WWE probably felt as though they owed their fans something after the terrible December to Dismember just 2 weeks prior, and so they beefed up the Armageddon card by adding many stipulation bouts, including one that was changed as a surprise on the night. SmackDown General Manager Teddy Long, feeling the holiday spirit, switched the standard Paul London and Brian Kendrick versus William Regal and Dave Taylor tag team title scrap to a ladder match, chucking in Eminem and the Hardys for good measure. Most recall this as the match where Joey Mercury's face exploded, but horrific injury aside, it was a total show stealer and a big win for the high-flying hooligans. In a hard-hitting last ride match, Undertaker downed Kennedy despite taking a spectacular big bump off the stage setting. Kane set MVP on fire to win the Little Scene Inferno match, Chris Benoit retained his US title over Chavo Guerrero again, and Gregory Helms defended the Cruiserweight gold against Jimmy Wang Yang. Both matches are about what you would expect. The Miz was squashed and then wormed by the Boogeyman, as well he should have been. And in the main event, Raw and SmackDown World Champs Batista and John Cena teamed up to thwart Finlay and King Booker, who, let's face it, never stood a chance. The match felt like a dark match main event or something, but there was plenty earlier on in the show to enjoy. Number 9, SummerSlam. There was no shortage of star power at SummerSlam 2006, but the big names didn't exactly make for incredible matches, even if the event was satisfactory overall. Kicking us off was a grudge match between Rey Mysterio and Chavo Guerrero, which had more intensity and less high flying than we were used to seeing from the pair, but it was a fine choice for an opener. Big Show then retained the ECW title in a sloppy, weapons-filled match with Sabu. Hulk Hogan beat Randy Orton in the Hulkster's last ever WWE match. Please make it his last one ever. This was the Hogan formula to a T, and the whole point of the storyline heading into it was an excuse to promote his daughter Brooke's singing career. How many did that last album sell, Terry? Ric Flair then beat Mick Foley in a brutal and bloody I Quit match. Credit to both legends for putting it all on the line here. King Booker retained the World Heavyweight title against Batista via a lame DQ when Queen Sharmell ran in. Things picked up with the sheer wackiness of DX versus the McMahons in a no DQ match that had just about everyone not booked on the show doing a run-in. The wrestling wasn't great, obviously, but for sports entertainment frolics you can't beat it. And Edge retained the WWE title by beating John Cena in a grand match where if Edge was disqualified, he would lose the title. Number 8, Judgment Day. One of the few high points of Rey Mysterio's World Heavyweight title run came in the main event of Judgment Day, when the Masked Man downed United States champion JBL to retain the strap after a well-worked and dramatic match. In other noteworthy happenings from an entertaining show, Booker T beat Bobby Lashley to become King Booker by winning a worthy King of the Ring tournament final. Finlay, who had interfered at the climax of the match, fell to Chris Benoit in a long and surly match earlier in the show. Mark Henry beat Kurt Angle by countout in a match measurably better than their Royal Rumble stinker, with Angle getting a measure of revenge by smashing the world's strongest man after the decision. Not like that. The Great Khali convincingly beat The Undertaker clean with one foot on his chest 14 years later, and I still don't know why. And Paul London and Brian Kendrick snatched the tag titles from Eminem in a lively opener. Mercury and Nitro broke up in the aftermath. Elsewhere, Gregory Helms retained the Cruiserweight title in a good match with Super Crazy, and Melina lost to Jillian and was then pasted by Crystal to cap off her wonderful evening. Number 7, Backlash. The main event was the best match of Backlash 2006. In it, John Cena defended his WWE title against Triple H and Edge in an inventive, bloody, and wildly entertaining triple threat match. Not a good match, but certainly entertaining, was Vince and Shane McMahon teaming up to take on Shawn Michaels and God. No, I'm not talking about Mojo Rawley here, I mean the actual supreme being who was booked here to team with his favourite sexy boy. Michaels did his absolute best to carry the McMahons, and the bouts livened up a lot when the Spirit Squad came in. The match was just one part of a months-long McMahon fever dream, mind you. Rob Van Dam beat Shelton Benjamin to win the Intercontinental title and keep his Money in the Bank briefcase in a super athletic match that painted both men in a good light. Carlito bested former tag partner Chris Masters in a decent opener, Umaga continued to look awesome by bulldozing past Ric Flair, Mickie James and Trish Stratus were just getting going when Trish suffered a legit injury that unfortunately curtailed the match, and Big Show and Kane, two more former tag partners, collided in a rather poor match. Number 6, Vengeance. It was only a matter of time before a band of male cheerleaders headlined a WWE pay-per-view. Frankly, I'm surprised it took until Vengeance 2006 for it to happen. In the show's main event, the Spirit Squad took on DX in a 5-on-2 handicap match that went about as well as you would imagine it would for the boys in green and white, despite the numbers advantage. HBK in the game flattened the group and then inducted Mitch into the Triple H Kiss My Ass Club. Like father-in-law, like son-in-law, as the old saying goes. The best match of the show was provided by Edge and Rob Van Dam, clashing over RVD's WWE title. A wonderful back-and-forth contest stuffed with counters and false finishes, Van Dam surprisingly emerged the winner after Lita's interference backfired. John Cena beat Sabu in a rather iffy Extreme Lumberjack match that was entertaining simply because of how surreal it all was. Johnny Nitro won the Intercontinental title in a free-flowing triple threat over Shelton Benjamin and Carlito. There was a time when people thought these three would be the future of the company, and matches like this are the reason. And Randy Orton beat Kurt Angle in Angle's last pay-per-view match before his controversial departure. Elsewhere, Umaga destroyed Eugene, Flair and Foley had a rotten 2 out of 3 falls match, and Imposter Kane beat Actual Kane in a real clash of the Canes. Number 5, No Mercy. There was no Match of the Year contender or major storyline development at No Mercy 2006, but every match on the card was good and served its purpose, and watching it back now, it's a damn fine professional wrestling event. Given the show was taking place in North Carolina, putting hometown boys Matt Hardy and Gregory Helms on first was an astute move and ensured that things started off on the right foot. Matt won what had been a good match with plenty of crowd heat. Then Paul London and Brian Kendrick defended their tag titles against the long-forgotten Casey James and Idol Stevens, aka Damian Sandow to you and I, in a surprisingly excellent match that really elevated the undercooked challengers even though they lost. The much-hyped MVP made his in-ring debut by squashing Marty Garner. Kennedy was hanging in there with The Undertaker before the poor disqualification ending. Watching Kennedy's feud with the Phenom, it's easy to see why so many people had high hopes for his future. Rey Mysterio beat Chavo Guerrero in a sprawling Falls Count Anywhere contest that had some really unique spots in it. William Regal, who'd had a woeful night as seen in a series of backstage skits, had to contend with being Chris Benoit's first match back after a 4-month sabbatical. The action was excellent, as you would assume it would be from two of the world's best. And finally, King Booker escaped with the World Heavyweight title around his waist by somehow getting the better of Lashley, Finlay, and Batista in a powerful main event. Number 4, No Way Out. By rights, The Undertaker and Kurt Angle's World Heavyweight title match should have taken place a month later at WrestleMania 22. A genuine classic, the Olympian and the Deadman had themselves one of either man's best matches ever, a 30-minute epic that kept people guessing right up until the finish. One of the best matches of the entire year, Taker and Angle dutifully put a bow on what had been a very good show. In other matches, Randy Orton beat Rey Mysterio to nab his Mania World title shot, and Chris Benoit won the United States title by downing Booker T. Both matches were around the 20-minute mark and very enjoyable indeed. JBL handed Lashley his first loss thanks to help from Finlay. Tatanka was revealed as Matt Hardy's surprise tag team partner for his match with Eminem. You could actually feel the air leave the arena at the announcement. Fans were of course hoping for a return of Jeff, but the match itself was fine formula fun. And Gregory Helms retained his Cruiserweight title in a frenetic multi-man opener. Number 3, One Night Stand. It didn't quite measure up to the original, but One Night Stand 2, even standier, was a darn good pay-per-view. Taking place ahead of the relaunch of ECW as a proper third brand, this featured more WWE talent than its predecessor, but the passion and energy was still very much there. In the opener, Taz choked out Jerry Lawler in seconds, paying off a long-running storyline between the commentators. Kurt Angle then tapped out Randy Orton to win a great match that really picked up in the finishing stretch. The FBI, Tajiri and Super Crazy were having a gay old time in their tag match and put on quite a show free of restrictions. Nice of Big Show to come out and wipe them all out afterwards too. Sabu and Rey Mysterio met in something of a dream match that lived up to its billing until the non-finish. Talk about not reading the room, the fans at the Hammerstein Ballroom did not appreciate that one bit. Much more well received was the 6-person match between Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer and Beulah McGillicuddy, and Edge, Mick Foley and Lita. Loads of violence and smoke and mirrors and off-the-wall stuff here, it had just about everything in it and was one of the best things on the show. Balls Mahoney's victory over Masato Tanaka was routine, and the Sandman caning Eugene served its purpose before the highly anticipated main event. A legendary partisan audience was on hand to watch Rob Van Dam win the WWE title by beating John Cena, who was about as popular as a rattlesnake in a lucky dip. Big Extreme John took it all in his stride and entered a predictably professional performance, busting his hump to have the best match possible for the fans and for his opponents, who finally reached the top of the mountain after years of trying to shatter the glass ceiling. Now go and enjoy it with a big fat doobie on the ride to the next town, Robbie. Number 2, WrestleMania 22. It's number 2 and it's WrestleMania 22, which was marketed with the tagline and Peter Gabriel song Big Time, despite taking place in an 18,000-seater arena. Though it lacked the stadium atmosphere, it certainly didn't lack a passionate Chicago crowd who were on hand to many WrestleMania moments. Of those moments, perhaps none has had more impact than Rey Mysterio capturing the World Heavyweight title in a triple threat match with Randy Orton and Kurt Angle. A little on the short side, no offense Ray, this was nonetheless packed with action and you have to smile at the result. John Cena overcame Triple H in the other title match, which further solidified Big Mania John as the guy going forward. Shawn Michaels beat Vince McMahon in one of the more outlandish Vince matches of all time, and just think about the ground that covers for a second. Rob Van Dam captured the Money in the Bank briefcase in a hair-raising stunt-filled ladder match with Matt Hardy, Bobby Lashley, Ric Flair, Finlay, and Shelton Benjamin. Edge gave a proper blood and guts performance for the ages in his hardcore war with Mick Foley, who also finally got a proper WrestleMania moment to savor after many attempts. And Mickie James won the women's title from Trish Stratus in a match which, while sloppy, is remembered more for the reaction of the crowd, who were fully invested thanks to the awesome storyline leading into it. There was some filler on the show. Kane and Big Show's tag title match with Chris Masters and Carlito didn't do much for anyone. JBL's US title win over Chris Benoit was ordinary. The Undertaker and Mark Henry's casket match was plodding, and the less said about the Playboy pillow fight, the better. But WrestleMania 22 offered something for everyone and is well worth a watch. Number 1, Unforgiven. The best pay-per-view of the year was one that in previous years was usually an afterthought. For whatever reason, WWE went the extra mile with Unforgiven 2006 and packed the card with huge stipulation and title matches. In the top liner, John Cena won a stunning TLC match over gimmick match maestro Edge to win the WWE title. This had all manner of crazy moves and moments, and both men took serious punishment for the cause. In another wacky outing, DX beat the McMahons and Big Show inside the new super duper mega Hell in a Cell. This one had it all: violence, hatred, blood, drama, and Vince getting his face shoved into the world's largest butt crack. The man is a billionaire, folks. Over to something a little more poignant now. Trish Stratus wrestled her last match as a full-time wrestler, defeating long-term rival and real-life bestie Lita to win the women's title in her swan song with the sharpshooter in Toronto. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? Elsewhere on the show, solid action was provided by the Spirit Squad's tag title defense against the Highlanders, Randy Orton RKOing Carlito out of absolutely nowhere, Umaga and Kane hossing about, and Johnny Nitro and a recently returned Jeff Hardy putting on a doozy over the Intercontinental title. You gotta love it.